Hey, welcome back everybody. Welcome to How to Build a Blog with Laravel, Part 3. Now this Part 3 is where we're actually going to start digging into the Laravel application, get our fingers wet, and start coding. Alright, now in the first video, Part 1, we learned how to do Laravel new blog. If you remember way back then. Laravel new blog basically created a blog folder with all of the Laravel files inside. And then we investigated a little bit about kind of the file structure. I wanted you to have a good idea for what goes where in Laravel and feel comfortable in a Laravel environment because those folders are always going to be what you're looking at. And so you just need to know your way around them like the back of your hand. Okay, so that was a good start to Laravel, the Laravel framework. And I think it was a good introduction for you guys to just kind of get comfortable inside Laravel. Now, part 2 was introducing Model View Controller. Now, this is a paradigm called MVC, but we talked about that a little bit, and then I pointed you over to another video called What the Hell is MVC? And hopefully you understand now what the hell MVC is. And if you don't fully understand it, at least you've got a taste for it, and it's a good kind of baseline for understanding what MVC is and how it works. And as we actually start implementing MVC, it's really going to click with you. So if you haven't watched it, go back to that video. If not, let's move on. In part number 3, we're going to open it up and start building some pages. Now in this video, I've got basically 2 goals that I want us to accomplish. The first one is I want to go back to the file structure and simply really quickly highlight the 3 important parts of the Laravel framework, which is the models, the views, and the controllers. I just want to point out where those are stored in our framework. And then we're going to go to the second part of this video, which is this is all the same video, but just got 2 goals in here. The first is to kind of point out where the model, the views, and the controllers are. And then the second is to create a few static web pages. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, guys, so let's go ahead. Let's just dive right in. We've been here before, and I don't want to waste too much more time. I know you guys are like dying to code and to actually get in here. So we'll stop talking and we'll start doing. The one thing I want to highlight first is, like I said, one of the goals of this video is to go back. Now that you understand what MVC is, you understand what Model View Controller is, I want to now point out where those are stored in Laravel because you're going to be working with them so much. You need to know. Now, first of all, you can see I opened up Terminal here, and you guys need to navigate with Terminal. Go ahead and navigate to wherever your file is saved. Now, on my computer, it's under the Sites folder, and then we go into, it was just called Blog. Remember that? There's just a folder called Blog that sits in our Sites folder. Now, I know I'm in there because it says Blog right here, and from here, what we're going to do is I'm using Sublime. You can use whatever text editor you need, but I'm going to do the commands subl, which opens Sublime. It opens this whole project in Sublime. So you can see here that we've got our structure for Laravel all set up in here. So make sure you get to this point before you continue on. Now, let's go ahead and look where these models and these views and these controllers are hidden. I keep saying that's what we're going to do. So let's take a look. Well, let's start with the models, the M in MVC. All of our models are stored in our apps folder, or our app folder. So you go under app, and way at the bottom of app, you can see this user.php. This is the first model that we have. And this is basically the model that could be used. We're not implementing it by default, but we could easily implement it if we wanted. Laravel gives it to us by default though, but we don't have to use it. But anyway, they give us a model called user. And this model is used to basically track your users for authenticating them, letting them log in or letting them log out. Almost every application needs a user's model. And so that's why they basically throw it in here to begin with, is to kind of give you something we know that almost every single model needs it. And so they just put it in there. We're going to actually go into what this is down the road. It's not important that we actually understand every piece of code, but I want you to know that this is what a model would look like and that all the models are stored in our app folder. So we open up app. At the bottom of the app folder, we have a file that's the name of the model, and it's simply a .php file. So user.php is for our users model. If we had a, later on, we're going to do a posts model because we need a model that tracks all of our posts that we make for our blog. So what we're going to do is our posts model will be called post.php. We always use the singular form and we always capitalize the first letter. So the users model is always capital U and then user singular. The posts model will always be called post, P-O-S-T, with a capital P at the beginning. And we would just continue that with whatever model we needed. So we'll be making one of those down the road, but this is where we'll save it. Next, we've got the model, the view, and the controller. So let's take a look at the view. Now the view, I'm going to close the app folder and head on down to this resources folder. Click resources, and then sure enough, you'll see the folder called views. And as you would expect, I clicked the language. As you would expect, all the views are stored in the views folder inside of resources. So once again, you can see we got a couple folders here. And at the bottom, we have one called blade.welcome.php. I'm going to go ahead and just click that real quick. And you can see here that this is a basic HTML document. And we're actually going to come back to this in just a second. But this is what a view looks like. A view is quite literally HTML. Down the road, we're going to learn a language called Blade, and Blade is a templating engine. And Blade is a way that we can basically mix PHP into our HTML and kind of keep them in the same file. And that's why they all have this blade.php file thing at the end. So all of our views are going to be .blade.php. And the important thing is to remember that you can always put just plain HTML in here, even into our views if we ever needed to. But then we have the option of adding Blade into there as well. But HTML always works. So this is our welcome view. We just ignored the .blade.php because they're all going to have that extension at the end. And this is just called the welcome view. And we're going to create more at the end of this video, but this is where they're all stored, is in this views folder. One last thing about views is you can put folders in here. And you can see there are a few folders in here, and we're actually going to create folders as well to organize all of our views because you're going to have a lot of views. So we're going to create folders to organize those views. And so it's really easy to work it with folders inside of them. Just as long as they're inside the views folder, they're going to work. Okay, so that's the views. We know where models are. We know where views are. Finally, let's take a look at controllers. Those again are in our apps folder, down over here in HTTP, and then controllers. So these are where our controllers are stored. You can see one file in here called controller.php, and this is simply our base controller. Okay, so all of our controllers, in fact, we have one pre-built. If we go to auth, this is our authentication controller, and I'm going to click auth controller. And here you can see that auth controller extends controller. And so this basically means that we have this controller.php, and you can see that it brings in all these other files that make controllers special, that teaches controllers how to be controllers. These are from the Laravel framework. Everything that says Illuminate is like a namespace for Laravel. So everything with Illuminate just means Laravel. So these are all the Laravel files that tell controllers how to be controllers. And they give us all the methods that we use with controllers are all inside of these files. And so when we create a controller, like an auth controller, we're going to always extend controller with it so that we naturally inherit all the properties that controllers have as part of the Laravel framework. So it's pretty simple. Once again, we're not going to get into the code there, but that's where the controllers are stored. And just like views, you can obviously put folders inside of your controllers. Inside the controllers folder, you can put as many folders as you'd like, as long as we just represent them correctly as we write the code throughout the application. Okay, so real quick summary, and then we'll move on. Remember that our models are in the base of the users folder, in the base of the app folder, I mean. Our views are under resources and then views. And then our controllers are under app, HTTP, and then controllers. Okay? So that's where we're going to be going back and forth to all of these. So you'll always probably have these folders open. Next, let's go ahead and get started with actually creating a few static pages for our blog. Okay, so what does every blog need? Let's think about it. Obviously, you need posts. Obviously, you need a home page, right? But what else? Everything usually has what? An about page and often a contact page. And that's what we're going to start with creating today are some basic static pages. These are pages that we need in our application, but they don't necessarily need to be filled dynamically. And you know that obviously what makes Laravel so great is the fact that it can pull data from a database and then dynamically create a web page out of it. That's obviously what makes Laravel great. That's probably why you're here. But we got to take baby steps. So first, we're going to learn to build a static page, and then we're going to learn to turn that static page into a dynamic page. So let's get started. Now, the first thing I want to show you is we're going to go down to our views and take a look at some views. So we got resources, views. We were just here, if you can recall, and we've got our welcome.blade.php. Now, I mentioned before that this is all simply HTML. Even though this is .blade.php, we can add HTML in here and it will render perfectly. Blade.php allows it to have the added benefit of accepting another language called Blade, which we'll look at soon, which basically intertwines PHP into our HTML. But you can still just copy an HTML document, paste it in a blade.php document, and Laravel will run it perfectly. Now let's take a look at this. Let's go ahead and launch our Laravel server. So we do that by doing ph in our terminal, making sure that we're in the right folder, blog. This is our current folder. We're going to type php artisan serve. And this tells the artisan command to run the server. So we're going to click enter. Once again, it says Laravel development server has started at localhost 8000. Go ahead and just copy this if you'd like. And let's go ahead and open our browser. So I'm going to open up a new window. Here we go. Going to paste and click enter. Okay, sure enough, we'll look at the console real fast. You can see that someone from this IP address, this is just a local IP. This isn't actually a real IP address because I'm accessing it locally. But normally there'd be an IP address here. And you can see that someone has accessed it at exactly this time. Okay, so this is our homepage for Laravel. So Laravel 8000 and we just have a simple Laravel 5. Now let's come back to our Sublime or our text editor. And sure enough, this looks familiar. We have a simple title called Laravel 5. Now just to prove that this is what's powering that web page, we're going to rename it and say welcome everyone. And then just to kind of prove that we can write HTML in here, let's go ahead and just create a little paragraph tag that says, this is the beginning of your Laravel journey. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and save this blade.php file, come back over to my browser, and I'm simply going to refresh. Sure enough, as I refresh, we get welcome everyone. It gives us the web page that we just created in HTML. So we haven't written any PHP yet, just HTML, but this blade.php file renders HTML appropriately. So you can always use HTML, which is good because you should already know HTML pretty well if you're starting this tutorial. Okay, so we know that we got one view working. Let's go ahead and create our other views for about and contact. So in our views folder, we're going to go to create a new file. So we're going to hit this an untitled file. And I'm just going to go ahead and save the file to give it a name. And we're going to type about.blade.php. You always have to have blade.php at the end of your views so that it can render the blade, which we're going to be adding in the future. And then the first part will always be the name of the view. So about is the name of this view. And then we always add blade.php at the end to just make it work. So let's click save. And you can see here that we've got now a file called about.blade.php. Perfect. Let's add some HTML in here. So what I'm going to do just to keep it simple is I'm going to copy the HTML we already have in the welcome page, in the welcome view. So I copied all of this and I'm going to paste it in here. Again, this is for simplicity's sake. We're going to extend this soon. And down here, we're going to change this to be about us so we know we're on the right page. Or about me, we'll just say. And then I'll just change this here to I like to make Laravel paid web apps. Okay, perfect. I'm going to go ahead and save this about.blade.php. So it's saved. And now we're going to go back into our browser. Okay, so where would we expect this to be? Well, obviously, the best place is obviously about the /about, because you'll normally be on your web page. You'll have a navigation bar. You'll click the about page, and it'll take you to /about. So let's go there, /about, and take a look at our web page. Okay, well, this isn't what it looks like, right? We obviously know this isn't what we created, but I wanted to show you this so that you can get comfortable and used to working with Laravel error pages. And that's what you're looking at here, is we're taking a look at our first error page. So obviously the page you're looking for cannot be found. What this means basically is Laravel saying, I don't know what you mean when you say /about. I don't know what to do. And then we get a little more detailed message over here. It says not found HTTP exception in route collection line 161. Now, it's really cool because you can dive into this if you really wanted to, and you can go into line 161 and read the code. But it's not really necessary for here because this is a more simple error. What it's basically saying is it's not found. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go or anything like that is what it's saying in our route collection. Now there's something I haven't introduced to you yet, and we're going to learn right now, and that's the concept of routes. So routes basically tell PHP what URLs to expect and what to do if you get that URL. So in the case of this, Laravel seems to already know what to do when you go to the home page. But if I type anything else other than the home page, it doesn't know what to do. And that's kind of the problem that we have so far. So we need to tell it that when we go to /about, we need to tell it what to do when someone comes to /about, or what to do when someone comes to /contact. And each of these are called a route. Every /about, /contact, each of these are individual routes. And so we need to tell Laravel what to do when someone hits that route. All right, so let's go back to our text editor. And I just want to show you where we store all of these routes and have them all listed. So I'm going to close everything. At the beginning, I'm going to go slower and make sure I close all the folders to not confuse you guys. As we get later on to these series, I probably will be less kind of anal about that because you should kind of know where we're going. But for right now, I'm going to keep it simple. So to go to our routes file, we need to go to app, HTTP, and we're comfortable in here because we know controllers are in here, right? But we're actually going to come down to the bottom, and there's a folder, or there's a file called routes.php. Let's go ahead and click that. And in here, you can see that this is our routes file. So this is really exciting. This basically tells Laravel what to do when people go to specific routes. And you can see we already have one built. So this is the route for /. And / is the shortcut for basically the base URL of your application. Now, for the case of testing, our base URL is simply localhost 8000. That's our base URL. When you launch this onto the web, onto the internet, then your base URL will be whatever your domain is. So if you have 123blog.com, then 123blog.com will become your base URL, and / will simply represent the 123blog.com, okay? Your base URL. So this tells it that, hey, when someone goes to the / to the base of your application, perform this function. That's all it's saying. It's very simple. And all this function does, as you can see, is return a view called welcome. So as one would expect, Laravel then goes down to resources, views, takes a look at the views, and finds a view called welcome, which there just so happens to be one. It's right here. This is the one that said welcome everyone. And then it renders it onto the page. So that's exactly what it does here, is that now that it knows that that's what to do when someone goes to the home page, then now it can execute that correctly. So let's come back to a routes file and let's make this work for the about. I'm going to go ahead and copy this route, and I'm going to go ahead and paste it above. Now, why am I doing it above? Well, that's because when you must know that when you work with your routes, Laravel works from the top of the file down. So when we get more and more routes in here, you're going to always want to keep in mind that if Laravel finds a URL that works, then it stops right there. So if you have a good example of this is, let's say you're going to /users and you want /users to display all of the users that you have. Well, if Laravel sees /users and it's second option down and it tells it to go to a certain page, it's going to go there even if /users and then maybe like /users and then you want to say like a parameter of like users equal private or something. That might be lower down, but because the first one technically qualified, it's going to skip there first. So you need to be careful with how you label your routes. What we're doing right now is basic enough that it's not really a problem, but it's really important to understand that that's how routes work, because as we get down to more complicated things, it's going to be more important. Okay, so I just want to introduce that to you now. Okay, so we created two routes here. And the first one, we're going to say that when they go to /about, that it displays the about page. So what we're going to do here is simply type about, and that just means the first level of HTML is going to be about. So our base URL plus /about, and that's all this is saying. We perform this function, we render the view called about. And this points now to our views folder and our about page. It's pretty straightforward, right? Let's go ahead and now we're going to try to go to /about and see if it works. Perfect. Sure enough, it does. It displays the About Me page. So we're definitely heading in the right direction. So let's go ahead and since we're on a roll here, let's go ahead and copy this again. I'm going to paste another one and we're going to make the contact page. So let's go ahead and do contact. And view is contact. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and save that file again. And let's come back over here and go to /contact. And another error. Now, this is where Laravel really doesn't know what happened. Sometimes with these error pages, you're going to get very specific errors, and sometimes you're going to get Laravel just admitting that it has no idea what's going on. Now, in this case, it basically says something went wrong. We don't know what happened. Remember last time it said the page was missing? This time, so it had a bit of an idea what was happening. This time it just says, looks like something went wrong. But that's okay. It tells us a little bit more down here in the detailed area. It says view contact cannot be found. So that's pretty straightforward. Basically what it's saying is, hey, you said to go to the view called contact. It cannot be found. It can't find the view called contact. Well, that means we haven't created one, or we saved it in the wrong place, or we mislabeled it or something. Now in this case, we remember we never created a view called contact. So that makes perfect sense that it can't find it. Let's go ahead and solve that problem by just creating one. So I'm going to go down to views, new file, got a blank file, control save, and we're going to call it contact.blade.php. Just get in this habit of .blade.php for views. Now for the HTML, I'm going to once again copy our page over here and paste it in here, and we'll come back and change this, but for now I don't want to mess around with the HTML too much. We're going to call contact me, and I would love to chat. Email me at alex@jacurtis.com. Okay? You guys can email me if you'd like at alex@jacurtis.com. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save that file. Now we're going to come back. We're still at /contact. We created a contact view, which was missing before, so it should work, right? And once again, we'll refresh, and sure enough, it's working. So just as we'd expect, we're getting everything the way it should be. I'm going to come now, check out about. Yep, it works. Let's go to the home page, and it works. So now we have a basic website we've created in Laravel. Now, granted, it doesn't take really that much advantage of the tools of Laravel, but we're starting to really piece this together. So this is really cool. Now, routes are critical to everything we do with Laravel. And what I showed you here in this routes file is really only the beginning. In fact, this isn't really the way we're going to use routes going forward, because normally we wouldn't have a function in our routes file. That's not really the MVC way. Normally what we will do is we would point a route to a controller, and then the controller would then process the logic as it's supposed to, if you remember the last video, and then it would render a view from the controller. And right now we're skipping everything. We're just going from the routes file directly to the view. So it's only a V application and it should be MVC. Okay, so in the next video, I'm going to show you now how to incorporate controllers into this and how controllers fit into the mixture. Okay, so I'll see you in the next video where we start building our first controller.